Caught my husband and sister having sex on our couch after he left our daughter crying with a broken arm. Now he's sending gifts begging for forgiveness while my sister lives in her car. I, 40F, and my husband, 42M, have been married since I was 22 and he was 24. Edit, sorry, he was actually 23. Up until recently, I thought our marriage was basically perfect. We have 2 kids together, a daughter, 12, and a son, 14. We have a nice house in the suburbs, decent jobs, and I really thought we were happy. We've had our ups and downs like any couple, but nothing major. We rarely fought, and when we did, it was usually over stupid stuff like him leaving his dirty socks on the floor or me spending too much on groceries. Everything was fine until I started getting this weird feeling that my husband had feelings for my sister. I can't exactly pinpoint when it started, but I think it was around my sister's divorce. To give some context about my sister, 43F, she's always had this weird hatred towards me even though she was our parents' favorite growing up. Like, she got a car for her 16th birthday while I got a used bike. She always found ways to take away things I loved or was good at. When I was younger, I really loved playing soccer and I was actually pretty good at it. My coach even said I had potential to play at college level someday. When my sister found out, she suddenly started playing soccer too. She was decent but honestly not better than me, not trying to brag or anything, just stating facts. One day she injured her ankles during practice and somehow convinced our parents it was my fault. She claimed I tripped her on purpose during a drill, which was complete bullshit. I was on the other side of the field when it happened. But being their favorite angel, they believed her without question and banned me from ever playing soccer again. They even made me quit the team I was on, which was humiliating because I had to tell everyone I couldn't play anymore for no good reason. That wasn't even the worst of it, she also stole my first boyfriend in high school. His name was Alan and we'd been together for about 6 months, which is like forever when you're 15. One day he just broke up with me out of nowhere, and the next week he was dating my sister. She also bullied me relentlessly throughout high school, spreading rumors about me and making sure I didn't get invited to parties. I mostly kept to myself and never said anything to our parents because they always took her side anyway. After high school, I tried to distance myself from her as much as possible. I went to college in another state just to get away. I met my husband there during sophomore year. He was sweet and attentive, everything my sister wasn't. We dated for about 3 years before getting married right after graduation. My sister actually seemed jealous at our wedding. She wore white, who does that at someone else's wedding? And tried to make the day about her. My husband thought it was funny at the time and said she was just being quirky. Fast forward to now. I started getting this feeling that something was off with my husband because whenever my sister called needing something, he would drop everything to help her without a second thought. Need help moving a couch? He's there. Car broke down at 2 a.m.? He'll drive across town to pick her up. Computer problems? He'll spend hours fixing it. When she and her husband got divorced a while back, she immediately called my husband and he rushed over to her place without even telling me first. That's just how it's always been, she needs him, he's there, no questions asked. I confronted him about it once or twice, but he always brushed it off saying she was family and he was just being nice. He made me feel like I was being paranoid or jealous, so I tried to ignore it. But the feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. About 2 months ago, our daughter broke her arm after falling off her bike or something. We both took her to the hospital while our son was at his friend's place. The doctor said it was a clean break but she'd need to wear a cast for like 6 weeks. She was pretty upset because she'd miss her dance recital and the end-of-year pool party at school. When we got home, our daughter asked if she could get McDonald's because she was hungry and hospital food sucks. She also wanted her dad to stay with her, she's always been a major daddy's girl. So I went out to get her some food while he stayed home with her. I remember it was raining that night and the drive-thru was packed, so it took longer than usual. When I came back maybe 30 minutes later, I found my husband on his way out the door with our daughter crying and literally begging him to stay. She was holding onto his leg with her good arm, sobbing that her arm hurt and she wanted him to watch a movie with her. I rushed over and asked what was happening, and he told me he was going to my sister's place because she wasn't feeling well. I asked him why the hell he was going there when his own daughter had literally just broken her arm, and all he said was your sister needs me and then he just left. Like, he actually just walked out the door while our daughter was in tears. I was beyond pissed. After I got our daughter settled with her Happy Meal and put on her favorite Disney movie, I called my son and told him to come home. I packed bags for me and both kids and went to stay at my aunt's place. My aunt was the only one in my family who ever acknowledged that my sister was a spoiled brat, so I spent a lot of my childhood with her anyway. My husband called about a dozen times that night, but I didn't answer. I was too angry. He left voicemails saying my sister had some kind of emergency but wouldn't specify what kind. He said he'd be home in the morning and we could talk then. I didn't care what his excuse was at that point. My aunt was super supportive when I told her what happened. She made up the guest rooms for us and even went out to buy my daughter's favorite cereal for breakfast. The kids were confused about why we were staying there, but I just told them Dad and I needed some space for a couple days. My son seemed to suspect there was more to it, but he didn't push. 2 days later I realized I'd forgotten my work computer at home, which I needed for a meeting the next day. I went back to get it while the kids were at school, thinking my husband would be at work. He works in IT for some company downtown and usually leaves early. I still had my key obviously, so I let myself in. When I walked in, I almost dropped my keys. My husband and my sister were on our family couch doing, well, you know what they were doing. They were so into it they didn't even hear me come in at first. When they finally noticed me, they scrambled to get dressed. My sister grabbed her clothes and ran to the bathroom while my husband pulled on his pants and ran over to me saying it wasn't what it looked like and that it was all a misunderstanding. Like, seriously? How is having sex with my sister on our family couch a misunderstanding? I just stood there for a minute, honestly too shocked to even process what I was seeing. Then I started yelling at him, asking how he could do this to me and if I meant nothing to him after almost 20 years together. I asked how long it had been going on. He tried to claim it was just this once, but I didn't believe him for a second. I told him I wanted a divorce and then I left. I didn't even bother getting my computer. I just needed to get out of there. When I got back to my aunt's place, I went into the room I was staying in and completely broke down crying. I think I cried for like 3 hours straight. My aunt came in to check on me and found me just sitting on the floor staring at the wall. I told her what happened, and she was absolutely furious. I've never seen her so angry. She called my sister some names I won't repeat here. She told our parents and most of our family members even though I asked her not to. But honestly, part of me is glad she did because I don't think I would have had the courage to tell them myself. My mom called crying, saying she couldn't believe my sister would do something like this. My dad was oddly quiet, which is unusual for him. I think he was in shock. My husband and sister have been blowing up my phone with texts and calls, but I've been ignoring them. My husband's messages started with him begging for forgiveness, saying it was a mistake and he still loves me. Then they turned angry when I wouldn't respond, saying I was overreacting and needed to come home to discuss this like adults. My sister's messages were even worse. She actually had the nerve to say that they were in love and had been fighting their feelings for years. Like that makes it better somehow? I just don't know how I'm going to tell my kids. What am I supposed to say? Your dad is fucking your aunt? Sorry for the language, but I'm just so angry and hurt right now. My son is at that age where he's starting to notice things between men and women, and my daughter idolizes her dad. This is going to crush them both. I called in sick to work for the rest of the week. I've just been laying in bed most of the time, trying to figure out what to do next. My aunt has been amazing, taking care of the kids and making sure they get to school. She told them I have the flu. I don't even know what I'm asking here. What would you do in my situation? I feel like my whole life has been a lie and I don't know where to go from here. Update 1. Wow, I can't believe how many comments this got. I had to turn off notifications because my phone was blowing up. Thank you all so much for the support and love you've shown me. It makes me feel less alone knowing that even though I don't know any of you, you're all here for me. I've been reading through all your comments and advice. Some of you asked for more details that I didn't include in my original post, so I'll try to address those. Someone in the comments asked if my sister and I have different body types, and yes we do. She's always hated that I was skinnier than her and made sure to comment on my weight every chance she got. Even after having 2 kids, I'm still smaller than her, which has always been a sore point. She would say things like must be nice to eat whatever you want and not gain weight, or you should eat a burger, you look sick. Meanwhile, I've always struggled with body image issues and had an eating disorder in college, which she knows about. Anyway, here's what's been happening. I've barely been sleeping or eating since I found out. My aunt has been practically forcing me to eat something every day. I told my kids that things weren't working well at work, and that was why I seemed sad. They believed me, which I was glad about because I still can't bring myself to tell them the truth about their father. My daughter keeps asking when we're going home, and it breaks my heart every time. One thing I didn't mention in my original post was that my sister and her ex-husband, let's call him Thomas, got divorced about a year ago. Thomas is actually a really great guy, super hot and such a nice person. Sorry, but it's true. He works as a personal trainer or something like that. He's basically everything my sister doesn't deserve. They got divorced because she had been mentally abusing him throughout their whole relationship. She would constantly put him down, control where he went and who he talked to, check his phone, typical narcissist behavior. She had recently started physically abusing him too, and that's when he decided enough was enough and filed for divorce. I remember he had a black eye at our family Christmas party last year, and she claimed he walked into a door. We all believed her at the time. Of course, being the person that she is, she spread lies about how he was the one doing the abuse. She told everyone who would listen that he was violent and controlling, and some people in our family actually believed her. My parents sent her money to help with lawyer fees, which makes me sick now knowing the truth. I contacted Thomas to talk with him, and asked if he wanted to help me get some revenge. He agreed right away, said he'd been waiting for my sister to get what was coming to her. We made plans to meet up at this cafe downtown. I was nervous about seeing him because we never really talked much when he was married to my sister. She always kept him away from the rest of the family, especially me. We met and just talked for hours about how abusive she was to him and how he also suspected she had feelings for my husband. He said there were times when he'd come home and find them sitting way too close on the couch, or she'd be laughing too hard at my husband's jokes. Little things that didn't seem important at the time but make sense now. I told him what I saw, and we decided to start our revenge plan. First, we reported my sister to the police for the abuse she inflicted on Thomas. At first, the officer was skeptical, because male victim and all that. But Thomas still had a bruise on his arm from where she had hit him with some kind of picture frame, and he had texts from her threatening him. The police told us they would start investigating and advised us to get a lawyer. I'm not sure if anything will come of it legally, but at least it's on record now. Then I took all the money from the shared account my husband and I had and put it in a new account in just my name. It was about $15,000, which isn't a ton, but it's enough to help me get started on my own. I don't know if this is legal, but frankly I don't care at this point. Since I own our house, it was inherited from my grandparents, I decided I was going to kick him out. My name is the only one on the deed. I got a lawyer and started the divorce process, which I knew was going to be a long and difficult battle, but I was willing to do whatever it took to get away from him. My lawyer said I have a strong case for a favorable settlement given the circumstances, especially since I have proof of the affair. I took pictures with my phone before I left that day, which I forgot to mention in my last post. Later that week, I sat my kids down and told them everything. I know some of you advised waiting, but I couldn't keep lying to them. My son was furious, but my daughter didn't believe me at all and told me I was lying. She accused me of making it up because I was jealous of her relationship with her dad. That hurt, but I understand she's just trying to protect herself from a painful truth. I told her that even though she might think I'm lying, I wasn't going to stop her from seeing her dad if she wanted to. That same day, I got home from work to find my aunt had gathered my parents, my husband's parents, my husband, and my sister all at her house. I had no idea she was planning this. Turns out my aunt finally had enough of my sister and told the whole family what I had seen. She also revealed that my sister had been in and out of jail multiple times for things like shoplifting and drunk driving, and my aunt was always the one bailing her out. This was news to me too. My parents had kept all this from me, probably to protect me or some bullshit like that. My parents were furious and started yelling at my sister about what a disappointment she was. My mom actually slapped her and told her they never wanted to see her again. It was intense. My husband's parents told him they never thought he could stoop so low, especially since his mom raised him as a single parent before she met his stepdad, who he calls dad. They've always been good people and I know they're ashamed of him now. My daughter stood up and yelled at her dad, telling him how much she hated him and never wanted to see him again. Then she ran upstairs to the room she was sharing with her brother at my aunt's house and slammed the door. My son just gave his dad this really disappointed look and followed his sister upstairs. It broke my heart to see them hurting like that, but at least now they know the truth. My husband actually knelt in front of me and begged for forgiveness. He was crying and saying he made a huge mistake and would do anything to fix it. I told him he had 2 days to pack his shit and leave our house or I'd call the cops. He started sobbing and said he had nowhere to go since his parents told him he wasn't welcome at their place anymore. I told him I didn't care and that I wanted a divorce. He could sleep in his car for all I cared. He eventually said okay and left with red, teary eyes. My sister just stood there through all of this, not saying a word. She didn't apologize or try to defend herself. She just looked empty. Almost like she was bored by the whole situation. I don't understand how someone can cause so much pain and not feel anything about it. 2 days later, I went back home with my kids. They hadn't been to school since finding out and were having a really hard time, especially my daughter. She would swing between crying and being angry, sometimes breaking things in her room. My son was quieter about it, but I could tell he was hurting too. He stopped playing video games, which is very unlike him. I sat them both down and held them in my arms, telling them we were strong and we would get through this no matter what. I promised I'd always be there for them. They both broke down crying until they fell asleep. I woke them up to take them to their beds, then went downstairs and had my own breakdown. I can't let my kids see how hard this is on me, I have to be strong for them. I heard the doorbell ring and thought it was my ex coming back, but it was Thomas. He came by to check on me because I hadn't been answering my phone, it was on silent. He sat with me while I cried, telling him I couldn't do this on my own. It felt good to just let it all out with someone who understood what my sister was capable of. He stayed the night on the couch, and when I woke up, he had made breakfast for me and the kids. Just eggs and toast, but it was nice not to have to do it myself for once. The kids seemed to enjoy having him there. He asked if they wanted to go somewhere special with him, like the arcade or the movies, and they just shrugged. I was about to tell him it was okay, that they didn't have to go, but he somehow talked them into it, and they finally agreed, running to their rooms to get ready. I gave him a big hug and thanked him, and he hugged me back, telling me to take all the time I needed. For clarity, my kids have always been close with Thomas. He was married to my sister for like 7 years and was always the one who would play with them at family gatherings while my sister ignored them. When they came back home later, I almost started crying again at what I saw. Thomas had ordered their favorite takeout, and they were sitting on the sofa eating while my daughter was cuddled up against his side, her eyes red from crying. I quietly took off my shoes and jacket before joining them with a smile. My son ran up and gave me a big hug, and we all enjoyed our night together. It was the first time I'd seen them smile in days. I had a talk with my kids, and they agreed that we should all start seeing therapists. Thomas helped convince them because he was seeing one himself after everything with my sister. I found a family therapist who specializes in divorce trauma, and we have our first appointment next week. My husband keeps blowing up my phone with texts and calls, but I just blocked him. I've also cut off my parents, at least for now. I'm still too angry about them hiding my sister's legal issues from me and always taking her side. I got tested for STDs, all clear, thank God. That's all for now. I'll update if anything else happens. Again, thank you all for the support. Update 2, hey everyone, it's been a while since my last update. I've been super busy with work, my kids, therapy, and just everything else. Things are starting to get better for me, and I'm beginning to feel good again, mostly thanks to Thomas. A lot of you have been asking for an update, so here it is. Sorry it took so long. My daughter has been trying her best, but it's still really hard for her. Sometimes she'll come to me or Thomas crying about how much she hates her dad, and other times she'll go crying to him because she wants his comfort. I don't blame her and never will, it breaks my heart to see her suffering so much. All she wants is for our family to be back together, and I wish I could give her that, but the damage has been done. My daughter and son had their first therapy session last week, and the therapist said this kind of back and forth is normal for kids their age. They don't know how to process these complicated feelings. One minute they are angry at their dad for what he did, and the next minute they miss him and the way things used to be. As for my ex, he broke things off completely with my sister and hasn't spoken to her since. I guess even he has standards. He got himself a good paying job, he worked at his dad's company before all this and got fired, and is living in a really nice house because, for some reason, he had been saving up money just in case I caught him and my sister one day. I know all this because my daughter tells me everything. I don't press her for information, but she says she wants me to know what's going on in her dad's life. Apparently, he asks about me all the time, wants to know if I'm dating anyone or if I miss him. I told her she doesn't have to be our messenger, but she insists she wants to be involved. My son doesn't speak to his father at all and never visits. I'm not going to force him to. The divorce is moving along slowly. My ex is contesting pretty much everything, trying to drag it out as long as possible. My lawyer says this is a common tactic, he's hoping I'll get tired of fighting and agree to less favorable terms. Not happening. My ex has been trying to get in touch with me and sends me flowers and gifts. I accept them because I hate throwing away perfectly good things. It's just not who I am. And if I'm being honest, part of me still loves him. It's not easy to let go of those feelings overnight. We were together for almost 20 years. That doesn't just disappear, even after what he did. From what I've heard, my sister is living in her car and working at a very low-paying job, some fast food place I think. Her life has pretty much fallen apart since all this came out. She lost her job, she was a receptionist at a dentist's office, and most of our family won't speak to her. One thing I want to make clear is that if my sister becomes homeless, I'm going to help her because I just can't stand by and watch her live on the street, knowing how dangerous our town gets at night. I know a lot of you will think I'm crazy for even considering helping her after what she did, but she's still human, you know? I wouldn't be able to live with myself if something happened to her when I could have helped. Thomas has been a great help for all of us. But like I said before, I have no interest in him and neither does he have any interest in me. That's all for now. I'll update if anything else happens. Again, thank you all so much for the love and support. It means the world to me, and I love you all. Mini update. Hey y'all, I posted an update not too long ago, and 2 things got a lot of attention in the comments. 1. Me accepting gifts from my ex, and 2. Helping my sister in the future. Let me start with the first one. The only reason I don't throw away the gifts from him is because I hate the idea of throwing away things that are in perfectly good condition. I was raised to never waste anything that could be useful to someone else. Thomas gave me a good idea about going to a women's shelter or orphanage and donating them. My ex usually gives me flowers, teddy bears, or jewelry, which I'm not going to use, so I'll be giving them away. The flowers I can't really donate, but the rest I can. I've already taken a box of stuff to the local shelter and it felt good to at least get some positive use out of his guilt gifts. As for helping my sister, I don't mean inviting her into my house. God no, I'm not that stupid. I'm talking about giving her some money because in my town, it's extremely dangerous for a woman to be alone at night. There have been several assaults in the past few months, especially in the areas where homeless people tend to gather. That's only if my parents fail to help her, which they probably won't. They're still furious, but they've never been able to stay mad at her for long. I know what she did was terrible, but I can't stand by and watch her get assaulted. That might make me weak or a pushover in some people's eyes, but I couldn't live with that on my conscience. Some of you asked why I haven't just changed my number to stop getting messages from my ex. The thing is, with the divorce proceedings still ongoing, my lawyer advised me to keep the same number for now. Plus, I don't want to make things harder for my daughter who still sees him regularly. She needs to be able to reach me when she's with him. Edit, don't worry, I would never let that demon of a person close to my kids or Thomas. She ruined her life, and the only thing I'll make sure of is that she keeps her car, nothing else, no contact. I would never cause the people around me more trauma than they already have. As for my ex, we have no future together, and I'm gonna make sure he gets that through his thick skull. Someone in the comments said that my daughter might be telling my ex about me. I hope she is. I want him to know how much better we're doing without him. And as for the money he saved up, I don't want it. I have a high-paying job, and my babies always get what they need when they need it. So we don't need his help or his filthy money.